I was talking with some people well placed in the administration recently who are convinced that Musk has the possibility of finding like $1 trillion worth of waste and fraud in the next 4 weeks. Now, we should just outline what's happened. Like, I've watched the Democrats respond to Musk's group of teenage engineers with contempt, and this is so 1960s, this mode of thinking, because Musk doesn't have 15, 20, 100 teenage engineers. He has, let's say, 20 to 100 teenage engineers with the most computing power that the world has ever seen at their fingertips, and they know how to use it. And there are some seriously smart computer engineers. I was just at a lab in Palo Alto that's doing things that are so science fiction like you can't even imagine it. And, they're inventing revolutionary machines as a byproduct of the revolution in technology that they're pursuing. And and all this is augmented by AI, and Musk is on top of that. And so he's really inserted the 21st century into the 19th century in DC. And of course, people don't know what hit them because no one knows what's hitting any of us. And his ability to insert himself into these hidden systems is absolutely revolutionary. It's a mythological trope, an ancient mythological trope, that it's the evil brother of the rightful king who is one of the prime enemies of the state. It's the evil brother of the righteous king, and it's the goddess of chaos. Those are the two enemies. It's the social structure pathologized or the natural world rebelling. Right, so historic enemies. Well, the evil brother of the king is camouflage and corruption. And what happens as a system develops is that it accretes predators and parasites. That's a biological metaphor. And if the load gets too heavy, the system collapses. And the antidote to that, the Egyptians had figured this out, the ancient Egyptians. The antidote to that was clear, honest speech and careful attention. The Egyptians actually had a god who signified that. That was Horus, and he was the defeater, the eternal enemy of the evil king. And Musk is playing that role with his engineers. He's in there finding out, like, how much of government spending is wasted. Well, you don't know. Why do you not know? Well, because the government itself doesn't even have the internal mechanisms to track its own behavior. I'll give you an example of this. So I worked for social services as a consultant in Alberta 40 years ago. And oddly enough, I was hired as a junior consultant. I had demonstrated a certain amount of competence in my summer internship, and I was hired to duplicate a audit of the social services department that had been commissioned by a major auditing house. I think it was Price Waterhouse. And they had charged the government a fortune for that the year before. And the assistant deputy minister asked me to update it, which was a pretty weird request. But I thought, well, what the hell, I'll give it a shot. And so I went through the audit, kind of line by line, and then called the relevant people who were involved to get a financial update so that it was current. And the first thing I found out was the government had no idea where it was spending its money, and all the numbers were estimates that could have been off by a factor of 10. So, and the clincher for me was, the punchline was that social services literally had no idea what proportion of the money they spent went to the end recipients. So old people, welfare recipients, etc., because it's the social safety net branch of the Alberta government. They had no idea. And of course, you know that the typical charity spends 90% of its money running itself. That's if it's well run. And I was reading a book at that time by a man named John Gall. It's a great book. It's a cult classic called Systemantics. trying to make sense of this. It's a great title, System Antics. Very smart. And one of his maxims, his axioms was, the name of the system is not what the system does. And so his analytical approach to the analysis of a system was, don't assume that anyone knows what it does. That's the first thing you have to find out. Now, that's what Musk is doing. It's called USAID, and that's its camouflage, you might say. It's like, we're out there making the world safe and productive for the desperately poor. Well, no one can oppose that. But then the questioning starts. Which poor people? How much money? And how? And the answer to all those questions is something like, we don't know. Or we don't want you to know. Right. And then, well, hasn't there also been revelations that the Treasury Department had a policy to not question its invoices?
Right.
I mean, you couldn't imagine a more insane policy, right?
Right.
That's it. What that means is that if you set up a shell company, what it appears to mean is that if you set up a shell company and you sent professional looking invoices to the federal government, that they would pay them without question forever, no matter how much they cost, just so you wouldn't complain. So, okay, so Musk is in there. Musk is in there with this incredibly sophisticated technology, rapidly tracking down spending. So the first question is like, what the hell are these agencies actually doing? And it's not like anyone knows, not thoroughly. Then the next question, of course, is how much of it is waste? Okay, so the management literature indicates management and literature on productivity and creativity. There's two indications from that literature that are germane. The first is that 65% of managers in private companies add negative net value to their companies.
Wow.
Okay, that's in profitable, well-run private companies, right? 65%. Okay, and then you might ask, well, how can a company survive? And the answer to that is the square root of the number of people engaged in a given domain of effort do half the work. So if you have 10,000 employees, 100 of them do half the work. And so that means that Musk can do what he did with Twitter, let's say, and fire 85% of the people. And all that happens is profit margins go up and everything runs more efficiently. And so will Elon find $1 trillion worth of waste in the next 4 weeks? It's like, I guess we'll see.